All right, well, thanks for joining. So, my name is Brad Wyro. I'm the Technical Marketing and Training Specialist here with Alton Technologies. And today I'm going to take you through some of the recommended settings for optimal results of your MDaemon spam filter. This will not be a comprehensive overview of all of the spam filtering features. It'll just be a quick overview of some of the recommendations to help you cut down on the amounts of spam that you might be receiving. So basically then in this webinar we'll help to answer the following three questions. Why did this email get flagged as spam? Why didn't this email get flagged as spam? And is there anything that we can do to reduce the amount of spam that we receive? So MDaemon provides these defensive mechanisms before accepting a message. And in this presentation, we'll talk more about the ones that pertain directly to MDaemon's spam filtering tools, such as the DNS Blacklist, reverse lookups, and IP shielding. So now some of you may be connecting via the phone and some of you may be connecting via a microphone and speakers. So if for any reason you're not able to speak with me directly, because I will give an opportunity to ask questions toward the end, then feel free to type in your questions into the chat window as well, and I'll be happy to help out that way. So we'll go ahead and continue. So virus scanning and outbreak protection are provided by the Security Plus plugin. Security Plus is an additional product which complements and extends the built-in security features of MDaemon. So it helps to provide a shield to stop security threats before they have a chance to start. And it helps to increase the number of defense layers before a message is accepted. Now, while MDaemon's integrated spam filter is effective, the real-time protection that's offered by Security Plus and outbreak protection will help greatly improve the effectiveness of your MDaemon spam filter. So the addition of Security Plus to an MDaemon server increases spam detection accuracy while decreasing false positive rates. And by the way, in addition to being able to use the chat feature, you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner I've added a few web links. These are links that should be helpful to you. For example, I've put a link to our Quick Start guides, a link to our knowledge base, and a link to our forums. And also, we have a particular knowledge base article that goes over the recommended MDaemon security settings for optimal results. So you might want to have a look at that article as well. Now, for best results, we would recommend that we follow these basic guidelines that we're showing on this particular slide here. So first of all, we recommend that you use the latest version of MDaemon Pro. MDaemon Lite may not include many of the spam filtering features that are found in the latest version of MDaemon Pro, and thus this presentation is intended for those users who are using MDaemon Pro. We also recommend running the latest version of MDaemon to ensure that you have all of the latest updates and security features. We also recommend installing the latest version of Security Plus. Security Plus adds two extra security features. One is a signature-based antivirus scanning engine, which includes automated updates, and then the other one is outbreak protection. So rather than looking at the content of a message to detect spam and viruses, outbreak protection filters emails based on the patterns by which they are detected to be spreading across the internet in real time. So adding Security Plus makes a significant difference to the filtering of unwanted email. And then finally, we recommend using MDaemon's Bayesian filtering feature. The Bayesian filtering component of MDaemon's spam filter is designed to fine-tune the spam filter scoring based on what is considered good email and what is considered spam. It relies on careful management of what is fed back to the Bayesian engine by users so that it can learn what is considered spam and what is considered legitimate email. Now, if a user accidentally feeds a spam message to the non-spam folder or vice versa, these false negatives or false positives can always be fed back to the Bayesian spam filter, or excuse me, the Bayesian spam or non-spam folders as needed. Now, if you're concerned that users are feeding the wrong messages to the Bayesian spam and non-spam public folders, then what you could do is remove their access rights to these folders and then allow only a designated administrator access to those folders, and then set up two more public folders, and you can call those spam and non-spam or whatever you'd like, and then grant users access to those folders instead, and then have those users feed any false negatives or false positives to those folders. So this would allow you to review the contents of those folders and then feed those messages to the Bayesian spam and non-spam folders accordingly. So this helps to cut down on any on user error that might happen from any of your end users. Many MDaemon customers are still using domain pop or multi-pop collection to receive email into their MDaemon server or to have their email forwarded on via SMTP from a third-party mail service. Now, unfortunately, doing this greatly reduces MDaemon's ability to detect unwanted spam and virus-infected messages. So if email doesn't arrive directly at your MDaemon server and instead is accepted on your server's behalf by another mail server, then MDaemon spam filtering tools become less accurate. And this is because a number of MDaemon security features rely on it being able to see the connecting IP address and the rate of incoming connections. MDaemon also needs to verify the sender's address, and it also needs to validate the recipient's address and to check the email content and distribution pattern before accepting or rejecting the message during the SMTP session. Also, make sure that the proper ports are open on your firewall to allow mail traffic through. And you can review the required ports in MDaemon if you go to the Setup menu and then you select Server Settings and then you click on Ports. All of the items listed on that particular screen will be the ports that you'll want to have open on your firewall, and then you'll want to close any other ports on your firewall that you do not need. So by default, when MDaemon detects a spam email, it flags it, and then it'll add a spam tagline and a score to the message subject before allowing it to continue down the delivery path, so to the end user. Now, in most cases, it's actually preferable to filter messages flagged as spam into a spam trap public folder, which can then be monitored for false positives by an administrator. And how to do this using WebAdmin will be described later on in this presentation. So to enable this to happen, we select the middle option in the Fate of Spam section on the window shown here. Now, on high traffic servers, having someone monitor the spam trap folder could be rather time consuming. Let's say, for example, if you have 1,000 users who each receive 10 spam messages a day, this would mean going through 10,000 possible spam messages in the spam trap folder. So for high traffic servers, you could select the third option to flag spam, but let it continue down the delivery path, and then configure your content filter rules or rules on your mail client to handle spam based on the spam tag in the subject line. In the spam filter section, we configure the scores as shown here. Now, make sure that the SMTP rejection threshold is higher than the spam score threshold. So by default, when a message arrives, it's scanned during the SMTP session, and a spam score is assigned to it. If this SMTP-based scan scores the message with a 12 or higher, then it will be immediately rejected and discarded from the server. Now, if, on the other hand, the message scores lower than 12, then it passes through another queue-based scan, and then the spam score is updated based on the results of that scan. So at that time, by default, if the updated spam score is a 5 or above, then the message will be treated as spam and handled based on the settings on this screen. Now, it is possible for a message to score lower than a 12 at the SMTP level, but then have a score higher than 12 once it passes through the queue-based scan. So the default values of 5 and 12 are fine in for most sites, although the score of 5 can be lowered a bit, let's say to a 4, for example, a 4.0, if you'd like to make the spam filter a little bit more aggressive at the risk of seeing a few more false positives. We also recommend disabling the option to skip the queue-based scan on messages processed during the SMTP session. This does put a little bit more load on MDaemon's spam filter, but it should provide more accurate filtering results in most cases. Now let's talk a little bit about whitelisting and blacklisting. We've got a few options here. We've got whitelisting, no filtering, whitelist by recipient, and then we have blacklist by sender. So the whitelist no filtering section allows you to define email addresses or domain names that will be excluded from MDaemon's spam filtering. So if you find emails from legitimate senders are continually being flagged as spam by your server, then you can add the sender's email address here, but we would recommend using this feature sparingly and only when necessary. The whitelist by recipient by default will subtract 100 points from the message's overall spam score for messages that are addressed to any address or domains listed here. Now, we often see customers add their own addresses in here, which then results in them receiving a lot of spam. So our recommendation is to not have any addresses or domains listed in here unless you're certain that no local addresses are listed. And this is what the log will show when a sender is on a whitelist by recipient. You'll see here that it says the user is in the whitelist and then 100 points are subtracted. The whitelist by sender subtracts 100 points from the message's overall spam score for messages from any address or domains listed here. Now, this is different from the entries added to whitelist no filtering, which completely exempts messages from spam filtering. So theoretically, it's possible for a message from an address on this list to still be counted as spam. Let's say, for example, if the message's spam score was a 105 and say 100 points were subtracted due to the sender being on the whitelist, then the spam score would still be a 5, in which case the message would still be counted as spam. This would rarely happen, but theoretically it is possible. And this is what the logs will show when a sender is in the whitelist by sender. So again, you see that 100 points are subtracted, and it states that the user is in the whitelist. So now we'll talk about the blacklist. The blacklist by sender will add by default 100 points to the message's overall spam score for messages from any addresses or domains listed here. Now, because spammers generally don't use their own email addresses when sending spam, then blacklisting the addresses that they have spoofed may not greatly reduce spam. Okay, DNS Blacklist. The DNS Blacklist feature checks the IP address of incoming SMTP connections against publicly hosted IP-based blacklists. Now, different lists have varying sets of criteria relating to why any particular IP address is blacklisted. But over the years, one list which has proven to be reliable is the Spam House list. So by default, MDaemon includes this list, but the feature is disabled because there are some commercial requirements that must be satisfied before any organization can use the Spam House list. And these criteria are listed on the Spam House website at spamhouse.org, that entire URL that I have listed at the bottom of the slide here. So if your site meets the criteria for free usage, and in most cases, most MDaemon sites will, then we'd recommend enabling this feature and then configuring it with the default settings as shown here. By default, MDaemon will check DNS blacklists for IP addresses within received headers on SMTP and POP collected mail. So these are the boxes that are checked by default when you go to the options menu for DNS blacklists. And when a connecting IP address is found on a blacklist, MDaemon will add 3 points to the spam score by default. You can go to the options screen as shown here and adjust this figure upwards or downwards if you'd like, but we find that for optimal results, 3 points can be used here. You can also optionally refuse messages from blacklisted IPs by checking the box shown here. Spam honeypots are email addresses which act as honey traps for spammers so that their spam can then be fed to MDaemon's Bayesian filtering engine. We recommend using an email address that is dedicated solely for the purpose of collecting spam. You can then post this address to a Usenet group or some type of a message board, and then hopefully that email address will start receiving samples of spam. Once it does, those spam messages are then fed directly to the Bayesian learning system. So again, this is an email address that is not used to receive any legitimate mail. It's used to basically harvest spam and then feed that spam to the Bayesian learning engine. Mail relaying, or relaying, is where an email is neither to nor from a local address. Now, in almost all cases, you should not be allowing relaying through your MDaemon server. And to check that this is the case, we'd go to the security settings screen and then click on Relay Control as shown here, and then configure it as shown here. In other words, For starters, you want to definitely make sure that that top box is checked to do not allow message relaying, and it should be checked by default when you install MDaemon. Also make sure that the remaining two boxes are checked. SMTP mail address must exist if it uses a local domain, and SMTP RCPT address must exist if it uses a local domain. A method commonly used by spammers is to send emails to or through a server claiming to be users at the local domain. This is also known as spoofing. So to ensure that this doesn't happen to your server, you should configure MDaemon's IP shield to protect your local domains. The IP shield tells your server to check that anyone sending email to or through your MDaemon server claiming to be from the listed domain is actually connecting from the expected IP address or IP address range. It's highly recommended that you configure an IP shield entry for each domain on your MDaemon server. When the IP shield is enabled, local users connecting from outside of your local network to send email through your server can then be exempt from the IP shield requirement when SMTP authentication is used. So make sure don't apply IP shield to authenticated sessions as checked on this screen. And then you can also exempt IP shield requirements for connections from trusted IPs. You should also ensure that all of your MDaemon accounts are configured with strong passwords. Otherwise, a spammer may be able to authenticate as a local user and bypass most of MDaemon's security settings. So strong passwords can be enabled via the Account Options screen. If you go to the Accounts menu, and then you click on Passwords, and then check the box at the top to require strong passwords. Passwords such as 1234 or password or let me in are ones that are the same as the user's mailbox should always be avoided, and you'd be surprised how often this actually happens. But we encourage you to educate your users so that they know what types of passwords to avoid. We also recommend requiring your users to use SMTP authentication. So we click on the SMTP authentication menu option on the security settings screen, and then make sure that the third box, authentication is always required when mail is from local accounts, is checked. Users will need to make sure that their email clients are configured to use SMTP authentication. Also make sure that MDaemon is configured to perform reverse lookups on incoming connections. The default settings shown here are the recommended settings. You can check the box Send 501 and close connection on forged identification, but this is not recommended because it's common for mail servers to identify themselves with values that do not match their IP addresses. You can optionally exempt authenticated sessions by checking the box Exempt authenticated sessions. Lookup will defer until after the mail command. So now let's talk about the Trusted Host screen. Trusted hosts are exempt from many of MDaemon's security checks and are only validated by their IP address or host name. So if you do have any IP addresses listed in this section, you should be 100% sure that you know why they are there and that they are fully trusted. If a host or IP address gets added to this list by mistake, then it can lead to an increase in spam. And if that happens, your logs will show when an email arrives from a trusted host or IP address. Most spam messages come from spoofed addresses and will be caught by most of MDaemon's spam filtering processes. Other types of spam messages, including, say, those annoying marketing emails that come in from legitimate companies, can be simply blocked during the initial SMTP transaction using MDaemon's Address Blacklist feature. Now, in general, when adding an address, we would recommend adding the sender's entire domain name by using a wildcard entry, such as an asterisk at example.com, as shown here. And this is, of course, only if you are sure that you want to block all email from the entire domain. And if you've configured MDaemon's spam filter to automatically filter spam into a public spam trap folder, then you'll want to have someone monitor that folder each day for any false positives before clearing out any remaining spam. Now you can do this very easily from any web browser on your network by logging into WebAdmin, which is MDaemon's remote administration application. First, you'll need to check that your account is configured as a global administrator. And then to verify this, you navigate to the account editor via the accounts menu, and then click on Administrative Roles, and then make sure that the box is checked indicating that the account is Global Administrator. So you should then be able to log into WebAdmin by entering the proper URL into any web browser on your local network using your local MDaemon email address and account password. Now, in most cases, you can access WebAdmin by entering your MDaemon host name plus a colon and then the port that WebAdmin is running on. In most cases, that would be port 1000. Once you're logged in, you can select Spam Filter from the bottom left in the navigation menu and then click on Spam Trap Folder. And then from the above list of options, now by sorting the messages in the Spam Trap folder by their score so that the lower scored messages are at the top, you could then quickly pick out any false positives that may have been flagged in error. And if you do see any false positives, you can simply highlight them and then click on the release button to have them delivered to the original recipient. So after releasing any false positives, you can then highlight the remaining spam messages and then delete them to clear the Spam Trap folder. And if you find that you're suffering from a lot of false positives, again, check to make sure that you have not inadvertently blacklisted the sender's or the recipient's address in the MDaemon spam filter settings. And then, if after making the recommendations in this presentation, your users are still suffering from too much spam, you should check to make sure that you've not inadvertently whitelisted or excluded the sender's or recipient's address from MDaemon spam filter. You should also check that the spammer did not manage to authenticate their SMTP session by guessing a local user's account password, and that their connection did not originate from a trusted or a local IP address. And then to check these things, it's best to refer to your MDaemon server's inbound SMTP and anti-spam log files, which you'll find by default inside the MDaemon logs directory. So any of this security activity or any security breaches, you should be able to hopefully find within the MDaemon log files. And if a lot of spam is still getting through, or if a lot of non-spam messages are being counted as spam, then you may need to rebuild your Bayesian learning database. So to do this, you need to stop MDaemon and all of its processes and then navigate to the MDaemon spam assassin directory and then rename the folder inside the Bayes folder. So you'd say, for example, you'd call it Bayes-old or something to that effect. And then restart MDaemon. And then at that time, a new Bayes folder will be created automatically. And then you'll be able to feed the Bayesian learning process 200 spam messages and then 200 non-spam messages in order for learning to take place again. So just to sum it all up here, the combination of MDaemon Pro, its Security Plus plugin, and direct SMTP delivery via a single MX record should mean that your organization does not suffer from significant volumes of spam or false positives. Most spam-related issues derive from either not using MDaemon Pro, not having Security Plus installed, not having direct SMTP delivery via a single MX record, or a misconfiguration of MDaemon security settings. So if after following these recommendations you're still having problems, you can double check the relevant logs on your server to see if something obvious has been missed, and then you can certainly contact us if you need further assistance. And you can do so via the support options at altn.com. If you have questions about any of the training-related materials, you can email me at training@altn.com. Or if you'd like to attend any further webinars, you can certainly sign up via the support tab on our website. So if anybody has any questions, I've opened the lines for questions, or you can enter your questions in the chat field. Any questions so far? All right, well, thanks for joining, everyone. And if you would like to see any other topics discussed in a webinar, I'm certainly open to suggestions at training@altn.com, so just let me know. And thanks for joining, everyone, and have a great day.